Hello everyone, I'm Njeri Maina, the County Woman Member to the National Assembly for Kirinyaga County. Welcome to the Power Panel Podcast Echoes.
Honorable Njeri Maina has distinguished herself as one of Kenya's most active and value-driven young MPs. Did you always want to be a politician? Did you always want to chase power?
I grew up watching Martha Karua, Benazir Bhutto, Margaret Thatcher. So for me, it was always the end game. I'm not going to parliament to be asked whether I have a husband, whether I can cook ugali. I'm an advocate of the High Court. I'm going to represent your agenda. I'm going to represent your voice.
In politics, you have to make compromises. Have you made any compromises?
I'm very grounded, so I'm very principled as a person. And there are things where I draw the line. There are things that I will not do for power. I'm very realistic with my people. I have a very people-centered leadership style. There's no room to be nice in politics. There's no room. You can be kind, but nice, never.
Welcome to the Power Panel Podcast Echoes, a segment of our show dedicated to exciting intergenerational conversations with some of Africa's young, dynamic women leaders. I am your host, Ambassador Rachel Omamo, a senior counsel, diplomat, and former cabinet minister in Kenya. Good morning, Honorable Maina.
Good morning to you too.
And welcome to the Power Panel Podcast Echoes. We are so pleased to have you as our guest this morning, primarily because you're one of Kenya's youngest parliamentarians. You're intelligent, you have verve, and you are making a mark in our politics today. So during the next hour or so, we want to delve into your experiences as a parliamentarian, your aspirations as a politician, and, the challenges that you've encountered along the way and surmounted. So, karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
So let's start off with the obvious question. This podcast is listened to by people across the world. And this role that you have as a county women's member is not something that is common across the globe. So perhaps we could start off by you defining or describing what a county women's representative is.
So basically, this role came about because of the 2010 constitution and the feeling that, politics in Kenya is patriarchal in nature. So women barely get a chance at leadership opportunities. So it is a way to just level the ground for women and offer an opportunity to showcase that women can actually lead. And it is anchored in the constitution, and it is basically, or rather, caters for women and also young people, and also representing PLWDs. But beyond the scope of that, a woman rep is like any other regular member of parliament. I can sponsor bills on the floor. I can sponsor motions. I am allowed to vote on everything that is happening on the floor of the House. We have seen a transition of women who were woman reps, transition to governors, transition to single constituency. So we're actually seeing the fruits of having these affirmative action sets.
What you're basically saying to me is that a woman's rep, you're just a politician. You're a classical politician, really.
Yes.
And they say that anybody who gets into politics is seeking power. So why would a young woman in her 20s want to be powerful? What is it that attracted you to politics? You're a lawyer by profession. Did you always want to be a politician? Did you always want to chase power?
I grew up watching Martha Karua, Benazir Bhutto, Margaret Thatcher. So for me, it was always the end game. And I always knew that at some point I'm going to end up in leadership. And just growing up in a community that was, had little but we would share the little that we had, seeing my parents struggle to take me through school, seeing policy gaps. I always wanted to offer myself as a leader and to see the change that I can make and the little things that I can do to at least make it better for people who grew up like me.
So you, for you, politics is about changing something.
Yes.
As you contemplated getting into politics, and as you thought about this role as a woman's representative, you knew you would have had to got it. You would have to campaign. You'd have to, um, offer yourself up for nomination, and get into the whole round of that cycle that many people often describe as very brutal, as very rough and tumble, as very expensive. What difference does it make for you to compete against other women? Does it make the playing ground more even? Does it make campaigning softer? What's the difference?
I do think that campaigning with men is a bit different from campaigning with women, but the challenges are the same in a way that the campaign is brutal and everybody wants to win, and there can only be one winner. And so in my campaign, there was like cyberbullying, of course, perpetuated by my fellow women. There was campaigns ran that I am too young, that I am inexperienced, that I don't have, a home at my ancestral place, that I don't have children, that I don't have a husband. So I do think that in different aspects, it is similar, but then it is also different in that perhaps we see a little bit more violence when you're campaigning with men, because women are not really violent in nature. So you find that for the scope of like campaigning against fellow women, there's going to be the cyberbullying and all that. But then the physical violence is very minimal because I did not face any. I can't say like I actively heard or could say or pinpoint that a fellow woman who was vying for the same seat maybe planned a physical attack on me. But with men, we've seen that it is a norm. It is like something that has been normalized in Kenyan politics. But the rest of it, the rest of the challenges that were there are similar to the male campaigns.
I'm surprised that the sort of salvos that were being directed at you during the campaigning period are so laced with patriarchy and that they were coming from women. How do you explain that? And did you have your fair share also? Did you retaliate in the same way?
It's quite unfortunate. I had nothing to retaliate with because, yes, I am young. It is a fact. It is not something that I can say, no, I'm old, and yes, I was just straight off from law school. And, they got these photos of me in university in jeans and a crop top. And they were actually printed and they were being like moved around in the villages. And, they were saying, my opponents, that how can you vote for someone who's dressing like this? And for me, my retaliation was telling the people that, look, I'm a young person. If you have a young person in your home, because majority of the voters that I was speaking to were my mother's age, how do they dress? Does that define them? Does that define their character? And I told them in terms of maybe having a husband or knowing how to cook ugali, I'm not going to parliament to be asked whether I have a husband, whether I can cook ugali. I'm an advocate of the High Court. I'm going to represent your agenda. I'm going to represent your voice. And that is what I have been trained to do in law school. So I told them, besides having a long dress, it doesn't define that I am going to be a good member of parliament. But if you want to be duped to that, then you're going to regret the choices later. So that is how I retaliated. I explained to them that that is me. That is me. Yes, I wore that crop top. I was in university. I'm not going to go to parliament with a crop top. There are different dress codes for different, scenarios. My social events that I had been in with my friends, photos were taken off Facebook, printed, that sometimes I was holding a glass of wine. And I'm like, these are things that people do. They are normal things. Yeah.
They say that you cannot really get into politics unless you know how to play the political game, unless you deal with the bigwigs, unless you know how to maneuver the minefields in the political landscape. Now, I want us to listen to a sound clip from Her Excellency Zainab Bangura, who we interviewed last year. And then after we've listened, I'm going to ask you a question.
I learned that in our societies, there are gatekeepers. These are the people who make the elections happen. They are the people who get the people to vote. The gatekeepers were there who control these people, who made these people vote, whether for ethnic reason, for whatever reason.
So, did you encounter gatekeepers?
Oh, yes, I did.
How did you outmaneuver them?
Yes, I did. I got into politics at a point where I didn't know anyone in politics. I didn't know the bigwigs. I didn't even know my area member of parliament. And I guess and there's all these other opponents who are well known, who have the financial muscle, who have the connections, and I'd feel quite out of place because nobody even knew my name. Even the county leaders in Kirinyaga at the time, like they didn't even know my name, so they just see this young girl who's coming, and I could tell as if they're feeling like, why are you even here? Like, you should not be in this space. Like, this space is not for you. But for me, I grew up with a very strong foundation of going after what I want and going at it relentlessly. And even without knowing them, the gatekeepers, I had issues with my nomination certificate. I nearly didn't get it. There were people the gatekeepers were trying to influence to have their candidates given the nomination certificate. They tried to talk to my party leader and say that I don't have finances, I don't have a name, my family isn't known, so I cannot be elected. But I really fought to the very end. They had suggested that we do a scientific poll, that we agree, we have a sit down and agree that I'll get a nomination slot. And I really remember telling my party leader that I just want an opportunity. I just want a chance, a level fighting ground. We go to the people and see how they will vote. And I'm happy, and I really appreciate that I got to go to the people. And they voted for me during the nominations, and eventually I got the certificate. So she's saying the right thing. Politics is, and it's quite unfortunate because some of them were women who have served for many years, who would have just held my hand. But unfortunately, it is what it is. But I'm grateful that I'm here.
So what do you think was the winning formula? You're young, you don't have resources, you don't have godfathers. You've offered yourself as a county woman's representative, which means that you're representing the entire county, not just a small constituency. I'm curious to understand how you packaged your campaign in a way that was able to convince a fairly conservative electorate to vote you into power.
I just really packaged myself as a young woman who's educated, who has integrity, who has no, past ghosts that maybe are lacking in the corner. I just told the people of Kirinyaga that I really wanted to serve them. And I told them that I do not have the money. I don't have the money to dish out like we see in the campaigns in Kenya. And I told them that if they send me to parliament, they're not going to regret. And I maximized also on the resources that I had. I mostly used fellow young people to campaign because then they were not demanding for much. I set up a small team that believed in me, that never done campaigns before. We used to have small cards and we'd do like door to door. And sometimes I'd be talking the whole day. I wouldn't even like have a voice by the evening because I have to explain myself to the people on why I am vying and I don't have money and I cannot be able to, buy them lunch. So I really think that we just put our heart and souls out there in the campaign. And of course, there was a huge God factor in it because I still felt that if God wanted me to be in this space, then he was going to make a way for me.
All right. Now, They say that politicians campaign in poetry and govern in prose. In other words, you make lots of promises, you raise expectations, and then you're unable to achieve them. Now, how do you manage this expectation that we have in politics in Kenya, where there's this idea that the MP is going to bring development, quote unquote, and yet your real role under the Constitution is to legislate, represent, and oversight government? How do you balance those expectations? How do you balance the promises that you have made to keep the electorate loyal and supportive of you and your efforts, especially as a young parliamentarian?
I do think that I'm very lucky that I had a bit of a grasp, perhaps because of my legal background, of the core mandate of a member of parliament. So I did not like go around making promises that I'm gonna, bring roads for you, water, and all that. But I did tell them that I was going to represent them to the best of my capability. But of course, yes, in politics here in Kenya, there's quite a lot of expectations for a politician. What I do is I'm very realistic with my people. I have a very people centered leadership style. And I do walk them down the path of the NGAAF kitty, what is available. And that is what I can say that maybe I'm the patron of NGAAF. That is what I am certain that we can be able to do this with XYZ amount. And it is Kenya shillings 9 million per constituency. And that is such a mega fund. So I do walk them down that and I tell them that this is what we are going to do for the year. You can have suggestions. You can say perhaps we prioritize education, we prioritize social welfare, we prioritize maybe perhaps maybe economic empowerment initiatives. And then from there on, I tell them the national government is supposed to do XYZ. The county government has XYZ money. They passed a budget of XYZ, and this is what they are supposed to do. These are the devolved functions. So I do think that there's a lot of civic education that's required, because you find that the general Kenyan electorate is not aware of what is the role of a member of parliament. What does a county woman member to the National Assembly do? How much do they have? How much does a constituency member of parliament have? How much does a governor control? So you find that over time, like, there was a bit of confusion as to what I should do. Maybe perhaps a road, we need a road, we want water. So I tell them water is now a devolved function, etc. So for me, I think it is about just communicating to the people. A lot of issues we have with, the poetry and the prose is communication. When you miss the point, when you promise people heaven that, you cannot deliver, then of course you're going to be caught up in a lie.
This kitty that you're talking about, what did you call it?
The NGAAF kitty, National
Yes.
Government Affirmative Action Fund.
And what are you most proud of that you've done so far with that kitty?
What we have done in Kirinyaga County, we have a Tupange Kesho program, an economic empowerment program for women and youth, where we fund special interest groups. And that is women, youth, PLWDs. The program that I'm really, really proud about is our education, Tupange Kesho na Masomo program. It is a full scholarship program from Form 1 to Form 4. And that is a program that I'm really proud about, because I can see, like, the way we are transforming families that have been embroidered in poverty for like generations.
They say that in politics, you have to make compromises. And I want you to listen to a clip again from Her Excellency Zainab Bangura.
I realized that for you to get to the power, the seat of power, you have to make many compromises. I have very strong conviction on certain issues, and I don't see myself compromising.
Have you made any compromises in terms of your values, in terms of your principles?
To get to the seat of power, I don't think so, but maybe like the compromise I've made to, like, within my political journey is to, like, go separate ways with my party leader politically, because I did feel that there were things that I could not compromise on. And I think I did mention that I'm very grounded. So I'm very principled as a person. And there are things where I draw the line. There are things that I will not do for power. Um, so I do think that in that aspect, I have lost persons who were close to me politically and who were allies politically, because I could not be able to go like the full length journey with them and maybe backtrack on my principles and ethos as a person.
Now, there is this presumption in Kenya, perhaps not true, that you know, women representatives often behave like choir girls, singing praises of male politicians, following them blindly. There are other presumptions that, politicians are, forever misbehaving, taking over people's weddings and funerals and church services and, splashing money all over the place. And, generally behaving in a way that one would not assume would advance democratic principles or, engender a climate of advancement in the country. Now, how have you ensured that you're a different type of politician and that these assumptions are not smeared upon you? What is the grounding of your values? Where does that come from? Your willingness to stand your ground and to behave and conduct yourself differently.
I do think the Kenyan political landscape is quite it's very, it can be very hard for women to navigate, and even sometimes, even when I see some things happening with my colleagues, I do think that people are trying to survive in different ways. And oftentimes you find that submitting to men in the political space seems to be like the way that women in Kenya have understood is a way to survive in politics, whether it is in regard to maybe playing along with the men and what they want, and whether it's maybe perhaps we've seen a lot of commentary from the men that sexualizes women in the political landscape recently, and that disheartens me, because I did join this space, and I told you that I really used to watch Martha Karua, and Martha Karua cannot take that. They fought so hard, the women in her era, to desexualize politics in Kenya. But then we're seeing a continuous trend where, women are being told, turn around. These are senior politicians, and I'm just wondering, well, what does the future look like if this is what my seniors would be doing in the field? So I think it's very individualistic. You have to draw the line for yourself. You have to draw the line on where people, even men, respect you in the political space and cannot tell you some things because there's a way that they know that you would react to it. But I really have empathy for the women politicians, because I do know that it's a very tough terrain for women. And oftentimes the resources are with the men. If you look at parliament, the people chairing the powerful committees are men. The people dividing the resources are men. So sometimes women feel like, you have to play along to get something. You have to play along to survive in the political landscape, to climb up the ladder. So it's quite unfortunate that these things are happening at this day and time. But I do think for me, I've just defined for myself what I can do and what I can't do, and what I want and how I want other people to treat and perceive me. But sometimes you do have to put your foot down. Even in social gatherings, sometimes you run into people who can be just very condescending to female leadership, and sometimes it looks sometimes untidy. But it has to be done, because if you don't, then there's going to be a general perception of women as weak leaders. And I never see people say that men are weak leaders,
You've raised an issue that we encountered in an interview that we did last year with a brilliant woman leader from Zimbabwe. She advises that young women leaders should draw support from mentors. Do you have a mentor? What is your support system as you move up the ladder in politics?
I do think that you have to have a very close knit circle that is a support system, a core support system that you can share these things with. So I do have a very close knit circle. Two of them are politicians. The rest are just my regular friends. There's a senator for Kirinyaga County and an MCA in Kirinyaga County called Matenge. And it's because we really actually campaigned with them even from the very onset. And unfortunately, I do find that in Kenyan politics, a lot of women in the political space view each other as adversaries, as if you're competing for space. And I do understand where they're coming from because very few women are in this space if you compare us to the men. So I do think that because of that competition, mostly women are unable to partner. And as a young leader, what I've done is I make it very intentional to mentor young women who are way younger than me. Who my PA is 24 years. My accountant is 23 years. So I do like I've taken it upon myself because there's just that competition bit that I do understand where it's coming from, but I do not want to be that kind of leader. So unfortunately, I don't have really female leaders that I could say that I really talk to. Martha Karua, I talk to her once in a while, but she's engaged in all this national work, so I know that her schedule is a bit tight. But close knit circle, mostly my close knit circle is actually like it's male colleagues.
Talk to me about social media harassment and how you manage that. Increasingly, we hear stories of women parliamentarians really facing the most crudest and most harsh salvos from the social media space. How do you manage that? Um, how do you cope with that?
Um, you know, um, when I first got in, it really bothered me, because you'll wake up and you have like instead of your head and your face, you have like an animal head, a dog head that's on top of your head, and and then sometimes like people would write all this nasty stuff, and my mom would be like sometimes maybe like women in the village would discuss it, and my mom would be like, so why are they saying all these mean things about you? And I just like made a report. I recall making a report, following up at the CID headquarters, but unfortunately nothing was done. So even when women leaders report, the investigative agency is very reluctant to act on these reports. So imagine what it's like for just a regular woman back in Kirinyaga County to make a report that actually sees the light of day. And to this date, even through I've followed up, I've done a letter, nothing has been done so far. So for me, I think you just learn how to exist in the space. I call it nowadays occupational hazard. Sometimes I respond, most times I just ignore. If it's a clarification that's required, sometimes because they'll have all these like over the top accusations, you clarify just for the people that care about you and know you, so they don't feel as if maybe perhaps it is the truth or start believing in it.
As we take this short power break, we ask that you subscribe to the Power Panel podcast. Let's work together to expand the Power Panel community. Visit our website, birdsongafrica.com, and follow us on social media to plug into the Power Panel network. Email your thoughts to hello@birdsongafrica.com. This is the Power Panel podcast, Echoes. Now, I want us to move on to, your work as somebody who legislates, and to ascertain, whether you have sponsored motions and bills, and how you go about garnering support around an idea that you may want to advance in Parliament. what are the skills that you need to have to mobilize people around you? What relationships do you have with uh, the the chief whips, with heads of committees? How have you, as a young woman, uh, been able to find pathways to deliver on the legislation, the motions that mean something to you and to your constituency?
I do think Parliament is very political, and oftentimes you find that people draw lines on political boundaries, their political inclinations. So that sometimes hampers active legislation on the floor. And it also hampers sometimes debate, because you'll find sometimes if maybe you're not politically aligned, you might not get uh, an opportunity to even air your views on the floor. So I do think the 13th Parliament it's quite disturbing to me, the way I see things being ran. But beyond that, I have a very cordial relationship with members of parliament. I think on a general scale and across both sides of the aisle. I have the Kenya School of Law bill that I have sponsored. It looks into reviewing the entry points and the credentials required for students to study an undergrad degree, uh, rather diploma, and also admit them to be advocates of the High Court of Kenya. I also have the Health Amendment Bill that is seeking to criminalize detention of patients in hospitals and detention of dead bodies in morgues. I've also sponsored a motion on reproductive held in Kenya, and a motion also on sexual education, because I don't think in this day and age that children need to be aware. Information is available at the tap of a finger on social media platforms, on TikTok, on Facebook, and the rest. And I do think that we need to arm our children. So the education system needs to consider that. I've also sponsored over 20 statements on the floor of Parliament. So I'm a very active member. And I do think actually Mzalendo, the one that tracks like active members on the floor of parliament, listed me last year as the most active young member of parliament on the floor.
Well done. Um, the issue that I want you to articulate to me in a much stronger way is the process you go through in moving or sponsoring a private member's bill, or getting people to support you around a statement. I want to understand what that skill is, how you go about doing it.
So what happens is that you really do have to work around, just having friendly relationships with members of parliament, personal, individual ones, because I've said parliament is very political. So if you're not politically aligned, you'll find that you have a lot of opposition to your bill, even though it is good. So for me, I do work around my personal relationships with members. If they have functions, I will attend. I have a rapport with them, and it has to you just have to be very convincing as a person and like appeal to members on a personal level. And for those two bills and the motions, they really have supported me overwhelmingly. I cannot say that I have had any challenge in regard to that, but I really had to lobby them. I really had to lobby them. I really had to talk to the speaker. I had to talk to the majority leader. I had to talk to the whip. And if you don't have those people on your side, then the bill will never see the light of day. So it really takes a lot of work for private members' bill. It is a lot of effort. Like for one of the bills, I had to appear before the committee twice. So I had to restart the process over and over again.
So basically, you're saying that you need to have strong persuasive and communication skills, and you have to have a knack at strategic networking,
Oh, yes, you do
because you
have
have to
to.
have networks of support.
Yes, you do.
And so you need to understand where the power lies.
Yes, you do have to understand that bit.
Why do you think you're instinctively good at that?
I think maybe my
At
little.
understanding where power lies, and then being able to join the power nodes together to achieve a success on, say, a bill you sponsored.
I do think because maybe of my legal background, in law school we are taught to persuade. We are taught to tell a story that is sellable. We are taught to like appeal, to the judge who is a person in power. So I do think that it has given me like skills to navigate parliament and given me like a foundation with regard to that.
I want to ask you about independent thinking. Um, Most people who are in parliament are members of political parties, and the general rule is that you ought to vote in conformity with the party line. When do you think it is acceptable and correct to vote based on your conscience? Because in some jurisdictions, if you vote against a three-line whip, for example, you could lose your parliamentary seat. So deviating from the party line is a serious infraction. So when do you think it is right and proper to do so?
I do think there's a bit of overlap in regard to like the party position, the people's position, and sometimes the individual position. Because those are three things that as a member of parliament, you must know: the when and the how. Because if you do not know the when and the how, then you're going to find yourself in a very tricky space. And for me, every time I defined for myself that if the party position, my party position, which is UDA, is in conflict with the people's position, then the people's position supersedes. If the party position is not in conflict with the party position is not in conflict with the people's position, then I have no issue as an individual with the party position. Or even when I have an issue, then the party position will supersede. So for me, I do think that quite along the years that I've been in parliament, I was able to fluctuate on that, and very prominently when the party position was clearly in conflict with the people's position in regard to the 2024 finance bill. I voted no for the finance bill because I do believe that my role as a representative is anchored on the Constitution, Article 1, that sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. I only exercise it as their representative. So if they, who are the people I represent, say resoundingly that this is a no for us, then as a leader, I have no authority, whether it is moral authority or even capacity, by dint of exercising that which is bestowed or delegated to me by them, to do the contrary to them. So that is when I took a detour in 2024 with the party position and the party leadership and the executive as a representative of the people. And of course, it does have its downfalls. There are things that I'm no longer private to maybe benefits that UDA members enjoy that I no longer enjoy, but it is a price you have to pay. You have to pick for yourself as a leader.
So there is a price to be paid for being independent in your thinking.
Yes.
Now, you are clearly an ambitious young lady, and I'm sure you want to climb the ladder in your political career. Now, one of your colleagues, I think she is the mother of the house, Honorable Millie Odhiambo, is on record as saying that good girls don't get the corner office. In other words, you have to be a bad girl to climb the ladder. Do you think you're a bad girl? And what does being a bad girl mean to you?
I do think that Millie is someone that I really enjoy listening to, and a member of parliament that I can say I have a good rapport with. And I do think what she meant is actually it's true, And I often say that there's no room to be nice in politics, and that is what Millie meant. That you cannot be a nice girl, you cannot be the person who's smiling, the person who's just like moving along with things, in the room that people will not even ask for your opinion. You're not gonna, raise your voice and say, I do have an opinion. And I don't think that I would say I am um a bad girl, but I'm like I can be persuasive when it needs to be done, and I can be very firm and resolute and very fierce. So I do think that I have the face of both. I am a mix of both of them, because sometimes you do have to employ certain mechanisms to get what you want. Sometimes you have just to just be quiet and learn what people are actually angling at. But yeah, it's true what Millie said. There's no room to be nice in politics. There's no room. You can be kind, but nice, never.
Okay. That's interesting. As you think about your political career, what is it that what role do you think you'd like to have as a politician? What would you what role would satisfy your fullest ambition?
Um, I always thought about like climbing up the ladder, but you get into this space, and there's a lot of like doubt that comes around that, and questioning on whether you would actually do the right thing if you are up there in the ladder. Um, Maybe perhaps as the time goes by, I have thought sometimes on whether I would vie for the presidency at some point, but then I've always wondered, would I do the right thing? So for me, I think there's a lot of questioning around whether I would have the right tools and the right people around me for the top position. So it's not anymore about like getting to the top. It's about whether I will be a leader that I can be proud of looking from the outside, and seeing the inside of how things are ran.
Mm. Has politics disappointed you in any way?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I had very high hopes of Parliament. I was certain that we were going to make monumental changes. We were going to be the Singapore of Africa, and I really did believe in it, because I got into this to serve, and to serve diligently and with conviction. And sometimes I have colleagues who will tell me, no, you cannot serve with your heart. Like, this is like, you just have to like be oblivious of anything that is happening in the society. But I do not know how to be like that. And sometimes I feel like I'm in a very strange space where I'm not supposed to care about societal things and emotions that are happening, but I do care, because that is a kind of person, it is a core foundation of my character. So to that aspect, it has really disappointed me, just getting to know the ins of it. I think from the outside, people would think we do such monumental things in Parliament, but then there's so many fibers and like people running the show behind, and there's very little you can do as a representative of the people.
So do you think that the power is an illusion?
To an extent, yes, it is, because even with the current political landscape, with a broad-based government, we do know that even the executive is not really able to execute anything that they do want to do. That they have to consult their partners. So to some extent, it is an illusion, because it is not exercised in 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 absence of participation of other people. So say I cannot say that I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and yet I do not have the maybe financial or budgetary allocation from the National Assembly to do the same for the people of Kirinyaga County. So to some extent, it is an illusion. And I think we get deluded that we are powerful as leaders. And yet, really, we aren't. We're not in control of the situation. I mean, we don't know how tomorrow is going to be like. But I do think that we get it over our heads that we're powerful. But tomorrow changes. I will not be the county MP forever.
Mm. So what are the things that frustrate you most as an MP, and what are the things that give you the greatest joy?
What frustrates me most is seeing how politically inclined Parliament is. That it has no modicum of independence, even a shred of it. In general, Parliament is just exists. But then I do think, and I feel it's unfortunate that there are all these other factors informing individual members of Parliament on how to vote, influencing them on that. There's perhaps maybe sometimes intimidation. Perhaps maybe they have sometimes maybe some things that maybe if they do XYZ, then there's going to be a consequence that they're not able to handle in personal capacity. That frustrates me a lot because I do believe that if we had some modicum of independence, we would be able to run. Parliament is such a powerful institution that we would be able to run this country in the right manner. But then what gives me joy is just the little changes that I see that we are doing back in Kirinyaga County. When I see a student saying, I'm done with my Form 4 education, I'm proceeding to do a course. Like, if it were not for this program, I wouldn't be here. That gives me like the heart to go on. It gives me like, it allows me to have the stomach for it because it can be really toxic.
Okay. Now, young people are seeking leadership in Kenya, in Africa, in fact, throughout the world. What do you think you have brought to Parliament as a young woman leader? What value do you think you have brought? Because young people are always saying that, we need to be included. We can change this. We can add to this. We can transform this. In your own experience, what does youth add to the equation?
I don't think you can generalize it as youth because even a young leader can be someone who's pro-system or someone who's not resolute, someone who does not have integrity. And I tell young people all the time that every time I speak to those who intend to vie in the general election in 2027, I tell them don't get in politics for the wrong reasons. Then because you will just be rubber stamping what you are saying the status quo has been doing to you, making sure that we don't have an economy that is running, that is working, an environment where young people can actually thrive. So for me as a young leader, I do believe that my leadership style, what I have brought to Parliament, and what I have, managed to maybe give the young people of Kirinyaga County who might want to run in the next election is integrity. Is that a young leader can have integrity, that a young leader can say no to persuasion, whether it is financial or whether it is intimidation, that a young leader can stand firm and stand with the people and by the people and by what is right. And I do feel that that is the greatest gift I have gifted to the young people of Kirinyaga. I may not have impacted each of them at a personal level because, of course, of the limitation. But then the people of Kirinyaga actually believe in the leadership of young people. And I knew that it was going to be a measure that people will use to judge the fellow young people who might want to vie in 2027.
All right. Now, when you go home to your parents, what do they think of you? Um, are they worried for you? Are they proud of you? Um, what what do they make of this young daughter of theirs who is on television, who is on the floor of the house? Um, do you think you make them proud? And do you think that the values that you learned from them are what keeps you steady and focused?
Unfortunately, my dad passed away 2 weeks to the UDA nomination, so I never get to like
Oh,
share that with him. But he'd be very proud. I'm certain he'd be very
mm.
proud because I'm doing basically everything that he brought me up to do and to be. My mom is terrified. She's very proud but very terrified and worried.
I want you to listen to the last clip. And this is an intervention from the former president of Mauritius, Amina Gurib Fakim, who we interviewed last year.
Power is an opium, right? It's a drug. It can become very addictive. This is the addiction that make people want to stay and never want to let go.
Do you think, despite the challenges that you've confronted around the power of an MP, you still are becoming addicted to power?
I do think my general observation is that people do like it is the norm to be addicted to power. But I'm very, what do I say? I'm very spiritual, and I do believe that there's a time for everything. And I have no attachment personally to the seat that I hold currently, because I always do believe that we serve for a season and for a purpose. And if at some point I perhaps maybe feel that, that that grace has vacated, or that I feel that maybe I'm struggling to really explain myself or sell myself as a political candidate in Kirinyaga County, then I as of now, I am certain that I would quit, and I would be happy knowing that I have done everything that I believe is to the best of my capability. But I've seen the addiction with people. But I think for me, because I'm very spiritual, it's very different for me. The way I got in, and I always say that I will leave at the right time. I might get to the top seat, I might never get to the top seat. But I will be where God wants me to be at any given time and moment in this lifetime.
That's a very soft way of looking at power and its hold over people. Um, which brings me to our last question. Having dealt with power, with leadership, over the last few years as a young woman leader, what is your power mantra? What would you say about power and leadership in 2 sentences?
It can be very corrupting. You have to wake up every day and refuse to shake the hand of the devil. It has to be. It has to be done every day.
Just say that again. Say it again.
That it can be very corrupting. You have to wake up every day and refuse to shake the hand of the devil. That is power.
Oh, wow.
It's just waiting for you. It's like, the way she said it's an opium. It's just waiting for you to be corrupted. It is the norm. It is the way things operate in power. There's always something like, you don't even have to look. There's always something waiting to corrupt your moral fabric.
And so it's continual vigilance. It's you're always testing yourself, always testing your integrity.
Yes, and you have to wake up every day and just pray that you have the strength to do the right thing.
All right. Well, I thank you so much for spending this time with us. It was very empowering for me to listen to a young lady who has values and principles, and a young lawyer who leads as a lawyer and as a politician. And I want to wish you every success as you proceed with your political career. We'll be watching you and cheering you all the way.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
This is the Power Panel Podcast. Echoes.